Hey, Real Life Ministries. I'm here with Dave Campbell, and he is our missions pastor. And a couple of weeks ago, I put out on the internet our trip together to Uganda and Ethiopia. We talked about the Ugandan part. Dave had already come back and then went to the Dominican Republic, so he wasn't here with me when I shared the story of Uganda. We're actually in 42 different countries that Dave helps to oversee with our amazing volunteer team and Paul Burns. This time, I want to share with you about what happened in Ethiopia. As you know, Dave and I went to Ethiopia and then we went to Uganda. And Ethiopia was equally as amazing of an experience as what happened in Uganda. So let me just give you a little bit of history about Ethiopia. We started there many years ago, started focusing there because we had a couple in our church, Dwayne Anderson, who is a surgeon, his wife Jackie. They made a decision, rather than just stick around and live sort of a retired life in Idaho, they decided to go and be a part of a missions hospital in Soto, Ethiopia, where they were not only doing surgery for the struggling people there, but they started discipling and training surgeons. So not only would they teach them how to do surgery in Africa with Africans, but also discipled them so that when they left that hospital, wherever they went, whatever hospital they would go to, they would actually make disciples there. Dwayne and Jackie are kind of some of our heroes.
Definitely.
And so that led to us going over there and working with them. One of the guys on staff at the time was Brandon Ginden, and he had a passion for Africa. He actually adopted an Ethiopian boy there as a baby. And so Garrett was born there, and we went over there together to do missions work. Well, we continued to work there, and then DeSalin, who was the hospital sort of manager, administrator there, really got a passion for discipleship. And he was pretty influential in what's called the Kalahewit denomination, which is sort of a Baptist denomination over there, the largest denomination in Ethiopia. And so this led to us starting to work through him in that denomination to train churches on discipleship. And they were kind of open to that because of what Dwayne and Jackie were doing and training of the surgeons there. So for the past many years, we've been working with DeSalin. Now, Brandon, when he went and planted a church in Texas, though we still work in Ethiopia, his main focus was creating Ethiopia Real Life Ministries, working with DeSalin and another pastor named Malatu. And so they started training churches all over Africa, not just in the Kalahewit, but all over Ethiopia and that region. Now, part of the way Ethiopia works is you can't actually have boots on the ground as a church there unless you have an NGO, which is a kind of credentialed African approved church or ministry. And so for the last many years, we've been training churches, but we haven't been able to have a presence on the ground because we didn't have an NGO. And it's because Ethiopia is very careful about who they allow from America or anywhere to come in and train their people, we just couldn't get an NGO. So what that forced us to do is just keep training different denominations on discipleship. So it was actually kind of a blessing. At the same time, Ethiopia is super important, and Dwayne and Jackie had told us that, Malatu and DeSalin had told us that. We were discovering that because it's considered the gateway to Africa, and actually the African Union meets there in Ethiopia, and Addis, which is the capital city, Addis Ababa, became kind of the central location for all of Africa for the African Union. And it's just since we've been going there, it went from 7 million to 14 million in that city. And so the Ethiopians have been inundated by the Muslims. There's Muslim countries all around there, and it's a democracy. And so the Muslim countries sort of targeted Ethiopia. They were going to put a mosque every 5 miles to convert Ethiopia to Islam, and then they could bring in Sharia law later. So the country of Ethiopia has really cared about stemming the tide of Islam, especially fundamentalist Islam. And they're careful about Christianity that goes there, or anybody that goes there, because they don't want to give the Muslims the right to do it too, and because the American form of Christianity has really hurt all of Africa, but in particular Ethiopia. When you go in and you kind of do a big evangelistic event, but you don't disciple, they don't really learn how to live their life for Christ. They become synchronistic, adding a little bit of, the witch doctor's theology, animism, Islam, Christianity. Then you've got the charismatic sort of come in with Benny Hinn, miracles supposedly, and then it doesn't actually happen, and they start going, okay, maybe Christianity isn't true. Here comes Islam in, building mosques, hiring people, doing all the things they do, not coming with Sharia law at first, but really kind of helping the people. And so what that was leading the country to is closing of the gap. In fact, I think we started, it was a kind of a 60-40 Christian, or those who kind of moved towards Christianity, and 40% Islam. In the last 20 years, it's moved to 51-49%, which led then to the country of Ethiopia creating a cabinet position for the council, the Evangelical Council of Ethiopia. And so their goal was to sort of promote Christianity to stem the tide of the Islamic movement there. So in the last couple of years, they formed this cabinet space for the Evangelical Church. Some of the guys that got on the Evangelical Council had been trained by our group of guys going around Africa. And so what we were teaching was getting into their churches. So they were very pro what we were doing. When they got into the Evangelical Council, the first thing they did was say, we want to give Real Life Ministries an NGO. So that meant that we could actually have a presence there. And again, this work that we've been doing, but what Brandon and Real Life Ministries Texas had been doing, going over every year. We go every 2 or 3 or 4 years or whatever. Of course, Dwayne and Jackie, we're always there. Right. But because Real Life Texas was going there every year, they just kept pushing the ball down the field, kept investing, kept working with other churches to plant churches. The work the training. This opened the door to the Evangelical Council, asking Brandon, myself, our teams, Dave, to come and meet with this council, this new council for the government of Ethiopia. So you and I and Brandon's team got to go and meet with the head of the council. And, why don't you just share a little bit about what they said to us?
They were enthusiastic to have us there. They welcomed us there, and I think some of the stuff that really struck me was how appreciative they were of the effort over the years, the consistency, the investment that Real Life, and especially Real Life Texas, had made in sharing biblical relational discipleship in Ethiopia. And they were excited for the training that was going to happen in the capital city in Addis Ababa. They were excited for continuing partnership, and really just gave us an open door.
Yeah, they basically talked about that they're the gatekeepers because of how much false stuff has been coming into Ethiopia. And they were like, hey, we're doing a training, and how many pastors did they say they were going to have and they wanted us to be involved in the training in? Wasn't it like 2,000 or 3,000 pastors coming in August?
Right. Yeah, it was a big number.
And they have how many denominations? I don't even know how many denominations, but they're like, we would like you to train all of our pastors. And so a cabinet post, a council, they got 40 million people on a radio program. Okay, so how do we get this out to all of East Africa? It was like, whoa.
Yeah, and all that was the result of years and years and years of investment, and them, in a sense, vetting us and seeing the consistency and double checking everything to make sure that this is something they wanted to get behind.
Yeah, and that led to the second meeting. You had mentioned that they were excited about the training we were doing there that week, and that's true. The Kalahewit denomination, we'd been working with them for several years, and they at first were pretty skeptical, standoffish, antagonistic, but as we started working with them and training them, they started seeing the biblical model. It wasn't an American version. It worked in their culture. It was Jesus' way. they started being more and more open. Well, last year, they actually invited Brandon and his team to go to their biggest college. It's the largest denomination, biggest college right there in Addis. And so after Brandon went and started training the students, they were like, hey, could we start sending our church planners through your training the residency that Real Life Texas does, which is using all the material that we developed here and we get from Scripture. So they said, hey, this was last year, they said, could you and Jim Putman, Real Life Ministries, Brandon Ginnan, our teams come, and they'll choose their top pastors from the area to come, and we'll start training them, and then they can use that to get to the rest of the country and even East Africa. So we went from meeting with the council, the Evangelical Council for the country, to meeting with the largest denomination, and they invited all their best churches. And so we spent 2 days training them. And then I think that was Dr. Freyu, who's the president of that Bible college, got up, and what he said was powerful.
Right.
Why don't you share a little bit about what you got from that?
Yeah, very impressive man. And so that their school, their Bible college there was called the Evangelical Training Center. And if you remember, I think, I don't have the numbers exactly right, but when we first started hearing about this, Jim, I think they were telling us, hey, they're going to get 50 or 60 pastors together, key pastors. And then as we were getting close to the date, it was like, well, I think there's going to be 120. And then when we showed up, what was it, 300 and something pastors. Yeah. So very enthusiastic, a lot of desire for them to be there. But Dr. Freyu really is a highly respected pastor and director of the school, and talked a lot about the gatekeeping that you mentioned, that they really feel it's important to have only solid doctrine come in, only people that are reliable, only people that they can count on. And over the years, he came to see Real Life as fitting that description. So they, again, opened the doors wide. And he was, I think, our biggest supporter, just admonishing the pastors that were there that, hey, pay attention to this. It's good. Our church is going to be following this. Take advantage of this. So it was a neat time to see all these years of work bearing fruit.
Yeah, I think what he said, he goes, I know you don't know this, but we don't let this happen.
Right.
We don't let Americans come in here. You're the only one that we've allowed to come in, and here's why. And they've been following us in America,
right? Checking
watching
things
all
out.
Of our stuff. They were serious about checking out our sermons, our training content, all that stuff.
Right.
And so here's what's happened. Africa has opened up. Ethiopia, Uganda. We're being given opportunities. The form of Christianity that many of these places have adopted is more of an American version than biblical version. And what we always do is go, hey, listen, Jesus is the hero. He's the one who saves, but he's also the one who builds the church. He gets to define the terms, and let's just do it his way. He didn't tell us, in fact, Brandon kind of coined this phrase. He didn't tell us to innovate. He told us to imitate. And so we just go right back to the Bible. And it works. Jesus knows what he's doing. It works in every culture. It always has. Every people group. The difference might be you meet in a house in discipleship or you meet around a tree. It doesn't really matter. That's not the location's not as important. And to see what God is doing there and opening doors, now we have an NGO, which means that we can actually plant a church there. And so we're in the process of getting ready to plant a church there in Addis, as sort of a first step to show them what one from the beginning looks like, using Africans. Our version of doing ministry is that not the Americans come and they're the saviors. We work through whoever people group we're in to disciple them Jesus' way. They get to actually live that out in their culture. So it's going to be an African church, Ethiopian church, being led by African pastors in the capital city. And at the same time, we're training churches and denominations and working with the council. So, it's one of those things, again, where I said this last week about the Ugandan opportunities. And I want you to be praying and thinking about this. We don't usually come in with money. We go, we train. And the reason for that is, again, we don't want the Americans with the money to be the heroes. And what happens if the money's cut off and they haven't developed a mechanism in their culture that they can run themselves, where they don't need us to come in. We give money, we do all kinds of different things, but we're careful about how and what we do there. And so this is one of those opportunities to go to buy property and build a building over there isn't like it is here. It's way cheaper. We could plant a church there in Addis using Africans to get them started, knowing that they're going to be able to make disciples on their own. So there's a couple of opportunities. The Ugandan working through the Bible colleges, working with the government to train pastors. This sort of bedrock foundational real life ministries sort of movement to give people an example of what it looks like rather than just talk about it. Boots on the ground with Africans. These are opportunities we have. And so we're just praying as a church. We're asking you to pray as individuals. How do we step into some of these things where these are global things, these are continental things, these are national things, and we're excited about it, and we're thankful for the work that's been done there for all these years, and God's kind of built a platform for us to I use an example of T-ball. We've all had grandkids. You got the tee, you put the ball. The tee's been built. We have the chance to hit off of that at this point because of the faithfulness of Dwayne and Jackie and Real Life Texas and the people that have been there for years and our people that are there going over there all the time. So I look forward to talking about these opportunities and praying through that. I hope you'll pray through that with me. And our missions team is amazing. I get to work with a dear friend, and I love you, buddy. And I'm just so proud of Paul and just your wives and Stephanie and your wife and Janelle, and so it's just a blessing to have a team here. We're reaching the world for Jesus one person at a time from right here in Post Falls. We got to live it. Out of the overflow of that, we get the opportunities nationally and internationally. And you've been a part of that, so thank you.